Today on Quest, television actress Liz Keifer. Life is a quest for logic and reason. It is a quest to find balance between science and faith. Life is a quest for knowledge and understanding. But most importantly, it's a quest for personal discovery. Whatever your quest, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. Welcome to Quest. Hello everyone, I'm your host, Todd Fischer, and this is Quest. For those of you that might be new listeners, let me tell you a little about me. I'm the founder of Metatomics and the author of the best-selling book, Metatomics, The Grand Design. I'm a philosopher, a theorist, a metaphysicist. I'm a perpetual pupil of theology, and I'm an expert in comparative religious study. I've also extensively researched the mind-body connection, anatomy, and physiology. I documented over 300 case studies while researching my book, all from a scientific perspective, with cases that ranged from near-death and out-of-body experiences to possession to past life experiences, as well as the metaphysical, the paranormal, and other unexplained cases of a spiritual nature. This podcast will bring you some of those astonishing stories, and in some cases by the people that actually lived them. From time to time, I'll be talking about important, perhaps even controversial issues from both spiritual and scientific points of view. The world we live in is ever-changing, and there's often a conflict between spirituality and science. And I wanted to bring you this podcast to balance that equation. It will show you how we know what we know. And there's still so much we don't know. For me, curiosity is part of what makes us human. It's the joy of discovery. It's what drives us. It's our quest. Today's interview is with Liz Keifer. Liz is a veteran of both daytime and primetime television. This podcast was recorded earlier this year, back when people could record face-to-face, which is why the quality is so good. Hopefully we'll be back to those days soon enough. I hope you enjoy today's quest. So today I'm with Liz Keifer, who most of you may know from The Guiding Light. She played Blake Thorpe. For how many years did you play Blake Thorpe?
17.
17. So welcome to the show, Liz.
Thank you. I had many last names on that show. Blake, Thorpe, Marler. Isn't there something else? Wasn't I married to one of the Spalding? I think so.
I think so.
I was married
think
to.
So.
But it was another incarnation of Blake at that point.
Right.
Yes.
And did you replace someone?
I replaced Sherry Stringfield.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
She was amazing. She was on the show for 3 years. And prior to that, Elizabeth Dennehy.
Wow.
Of Brian Dennehy's daughter.
Yeah.
Brilliant. All of them brilliant. I mean, those were some class acts.
You were the most popular Blake, though, I think.
Oh, well, aren't you? I was the longest. You know, it's funny. I saw somebody posted something on social media the other day. They were doing one of those, which Blake did you like better? Just my biggest nightmare, right? I wake up to that. But somebody said something lovely. And it's like, Sherry was the Blake you loved to hate. And I was the Blake you just wanted to love. And I think that that's very true, because my Blake was not as edgy, but it had so much more vulnerability and evolved into a full human being instead of just a,
Right.
bad girl.
Now, I was, little known fact about Todd, but I did watch The Guiding Light starting in middle school. And I got kind of hooked into it. It was one of those things that was always on when I got off the bus and went home. But it was always at like 3:30 or something. It was always like halfway through the show. I always caught the second half of the show. It was always frustrating for me. So in the mid-'80s, I got hooked on Guiding Light, which I watched for a long time.
Well, that makes you a very smart person.
It does, yeah.
I've always said that Guiding Light fans are just they have the best taste. They're very intelligent. But honestly, I have to say, I started watching it in 1979.
Wow.
So I was a big fan of the show for
So
years.
So I
before went on
watched,
it.
your predecessor, and then
Yes.
I got you as I watched into the 90s. But I remember my grandparents would have on like All My Children and
Yeah.
things like Ryan's Hope and things like that. And those would always be on in the background, although I never really paid much attention to them. They were just always
Yeah.
on. And then I remember there was this little time frame where I liked the Days of Our Lives. Especially when they implemented some like really corny stories. I was like, there's a vampire in the show. I'm totally going to watch this,
Those
or
were fun.
whatever it was. I can't remember if someone was possessed. Maybe that's what it was.
I
It
think
was a
Marlena.
possession.
Yeah.
It was a possession. Yeah. And I'm like, hey, this is great. Why wasn't I
that's
watching
kinda
this all the time? But yeah, so soaps are an interesting thing, but what we're going to do is we'll go back way before you did that. So, I want to touch on this because I like 80s television, and how big of a fan I am of some of these shows that
You
you were in.
I'm so impressed.
But let's go back even before that. So tell me, where did you grow up? Tell me about your schooling and how you got into wanting to be an actress. Let's go over that.
Well, I grew up in California, Southern California, born in Santa Monica, actually. So I have to say, I didn't have to travel far. It was right in my backyard. And I really just did the regular. My sister was very involved in theater, and she was 6 years older than me and always pulled me in from the time I was 5 years old on to be the kid in the Christmas pageant. And, I was always being volunteered for something. And so I have to say, I rather liked being on stage. It was fun. It was fun. And I loved being involved with whatever she was involved with. And I used to look up to the high school productions. And as a kid, I would go see everything and have crushes on all the leading men. When I was in fourth grade, that was a big deal. And then I guess I got into it through singing. I was always a singer first, and I'd be involved in all the madrigal groups and all the singing groups, which led to getting into the musicals, and I just loved it. It was where I became alive, and it was where I was able to express myself fully. I have to say, I came from a household that was, my father was, I'm going to say overprotective. And strict, and he was very sick for most of my life, and there was this feeling of, I need to be a good girl and follow the rules, not upset the boat. And so that shaped a lot of my development, where I just wasn't allowed to show the dark sides of me or the wild sides of me or whatever. It's like, put that on hold for now. Let's not upset the apple cart. But then I could get into theater, and I was allowed to be all this stuff, and it was okay. I mean, I was doing a part, and I could tap into all those different parts of my personality, and I think that's why I loved it so much.
And did you do anything as a child actress? Did you get commercials or involved in any TV or film then?
No, I think the closest thing I did when I was 15, I was part of a group called the Young Americans, which was great. We traveled around California for me. I didn't go much further. I didn't go across country, but I remember doing a show with Bob Hope and all that kind of thing. And that was a little semi-professional song and dance group. I used to be the youngest and smallest, and I would be in the middle singing, "I've Got a Little Guiding Light." Hello.
Wow.
That used to be my number.
Wow.
But anyway, that's when I was 15. I did start when I was 18. That's when I started doing commercials and getting into television and all of that. I did have an agent for a while when I was 16, but it was a tough one when I was in high school. It was a tough, because at that point they want you to be over 18 to play a 15-year-old.
Sure.
And so.
Where did you go to college? Was it USC? Did you go there?
No, I was at UCLA.
UCLA, okay.
And then I went to, it's called the Academy of Stage and Cinema Arts, where I studied with David Alexander, who is no longer with us, and neither is this particular school. It was really quite wonderful. At the time, it was the only professional school in Los Angeles that combined stage and film. So I was there for about 4 years while I was on Young and the Restless, and trying to learn as I go, because I was at UCLA. I was in the music department.
I see. And what was your first big television break outside of a soap? Was it Happy Days?
Happy Days was one of the first. It was the second job I ever did. The first one was Lou Grant.
Right, Lou Grant, right.
Lou Grant, where I was the lead of a movie that he was watching, and it was very controversial because it was all about the effects of how watching violence can affect kids. And I was a girl that had a boyfriend that was in a gang, and they had just beat him up. The gang members had beat him up and raped me.
Wow.
And I had to drag this boyfriend into a car and get into the car and go after the gang members who were off on motorcycles and run them over. And
that's
and
intense for a Lou Grant episode.
So intense that because it had to be a very controversial movie that they were watching, and so I was a movie within a movie because I never got to work with Ed Asner. He just was. They would have shots of the footage that I filmed and them watching it, being mortified. Right? That was quite a first show.
So I'm going to run the list of all the cool stuff you did that I happen to be fans of all these things. So you were in Happy Days,
Yes.
Cheers, The Facts of Life, Full House, 21 Jump Street, My Two Dads, Charles in Charge, Married with Children, Superboy, Freddy's Nightmares, which some people won't remember Freddy's Nightmares. I was a big fan of the show.
Oh my gosh, I did some big ones on that one. Yeah, that was a lot of.
But and then we'll get into some things after that. But like this was me growing up on TV. A big nerd that I was consumed with television. I loved television, and I tuned into all of these things. So let's start with Happy Days.
Happy Days.
You're in Substitute Fonzie, which is one of my favorite episodes.
I love it.
What do you remember from the show? I mean, obviously coming in and like in any kind of guest starring role, there's already a family that's there, that's already happening.
They were so wonderful. It was so wonderful. But Henry Winkler, of course, is the biggest impression, my fondest memory, because my scenes were with him, where he was teaching, substitute teaching for sex or health class, and I raised my hand and asked if he could explain how you got pregnant. And whoa! And which then he does, and then they're going to fire him, and then all this. Then I come to him and thank him because my mother told me you could get pregnant by kissing a boy while wearing a bathing suit, and I thought I was pregnant. And thank you for explaining this to me, and now I can relax. But I had like 3 or 4 scenes with him, and he was just magnificent and generous, and I was very self-conscious. I think I was 18. I was very self-conscious, and I was very much aware of what I was doing and when I was going to make my entrances and how I was going to say my lines. And I think he saw that and went, And he used to do something, I just remember this, waiting to go into the scene of Arnold's. There was one scene where I have to go to Arnold's. I walk into Arnold's, and he makes an entrance after me. And I'm waiting for my cue to go on, and he's backstage or, right outside of camera completely distracting me. Just won't stop talking to me, won't stop. To me, it was so irritating at the time. It's like, I am trying to listen to my cue. What are you doing, you know? And what I realized later was he was just keeping me present. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Which I found, I realized later, oh yeah, that's what he was doing. He was making sure that I just didn't get too in my head. And I was so, what's the word? I was so engaged in trying to get him to stop talking to me that by the time they did cue me, he practically had to, push me onto the set, and then I was 100% present.
Wow.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, was that show, did it have a laugh track, or was it taped with a studio audience? Do you remember?
That was taped with a studio audience. Yeah.
What was that like, performing in front of people? You had some theater, so was it
It was great. It's
similar
just
to
like
that?
doing theater, especially with the 3 cameras, because I really loved it. I loved every single show that I did in the 80s, all of them, Cheers, they all had 3 camera setups. So you just have to make sure that you're positioned correctly for the cameras, but really they find you. So it's like doing theater and allowing cameras to
Sure.
film you.
Did you work with Ron Howard later on?
No.
You didn't? Okay. I couldn't remember if you did or not.
Well,
What your relationship was with Ron Howard.
I have a relationship with Ron Howard in my head. That's another story. I feel like I know Ron. I actually did audition for him. I did meet him when I did the Happy Days. He wasn't on the episode of Happy Days because that was the last season of Happy Days. He was off it by then.
Yeah.
But then I went in and I had a meeting with him for a pilot that he was shooting called Skyward. And he was very lovely.
He didn't come back till the end, right, at the wedding.
Yeah.
Like, he was gone that whole season.
Yeah.
And I think he came back for Joni's wedding.
Yeah.
And that was like a big surprise.
Yeah.
And he had that obnoxious mustache, I think, in the episode. He looked totally different.
How dare he? How dare he grow up?
The last season was kind of rough to watch, but I do like Substitute Fonzie. It's one of my favorite episodes.
And Ted McGinley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and who is kind of like got this odd reputation of, if Ted McGinley shows up on your show, you're in your last season of your show. He's the kiss of death for your show if he comes on. It's terrible.
And he was the nicest guy.
He did Love Boat and all that too.
Yeah.
Same way, he would come on and he's great to watch, but like it was always like the tail end of the show. What was Cheers like? What do you remember from that?
Just
set?
fantastic. That was so much fun. I do remember auditioning for it, and it was this part in the prologue, and it was a little tricky because I literally had to be asking Woody Harrelson, the character of Woody, he plays Woody, out on a date. I asked him out. So how do they go about? I was not even 21, so what was I doing in the bar in the first place? That's just another. We'll put that one aside for a second. But how do you pull that off? I'm supposed to be the girl that you would love to bring home to mom and dad, and here I am asking him out for coffee, and he runs away from he just can't handle it, and so I'm the catalyst for his story. But I remember at the audition and the callback for this, and they're all the powers that be are in the room, and they were saying, okay, they mentioned that it may not be a role that actually gets into the final script. It's possible that it could get cut. And I remember just in the auditioning telling them, oh, please don't cut this. I'll be a hat rack. I will be anything on this show that you want. I said that to them. But anyway, it was lovely, fabulous. The Norm character.
Yeah.
What's the actor's name?
Oh gosh, it'll come to me in a minute.
Yeah, it will.
Yeah.
It'll come.
Yep.
He was the sweetest, most I sat next to him a lot at the bar when we were with rehearsing. He was so lovely.
George Wendt.
Right? Yeah,
George
yeah, yeah. George, yeah. They were all lovely. I remember Ted Danson brought in a masseuse the day of the shooting. You know, when you rehearse all week long.
Right.
Which is, I love that. That's like theater. You just get to rehearse in stages all week long, and eventually they add the cameras, and then you do dress rehearsal, and then you shoot it before a live audience twice. You have an afternoon show and an evening performance, and you get notes in between. And I remember Ted Danson hired a masseuse for anybody's use the day of the filming, and I was beyond ecstatic.
Could Cheers come back in this world we're in today of shows being rebooted and brought back?
Wouldn't that be nice?
Could Cheers come back?
Why not?
Could Sam Malone exist in the world today in our 21st century Me Too era?
I would love to see it, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd love to see a show. I'd love to see him come back and then have all the girls have to come back. And he's got to answer to it. Wouldn't that be fun?
That would be interesting.
I would like that.
You always hear rumblings about something with Cheers. You know, Cheers is one of those rare shows that's like Friends or Seinfeld. There's a handful of shows, The Office, that people just continue to tune into.
Yeah.
And that's why those shows are so valuable, especially today with this way we have all these streaming platforms that are happening. And, you know, just as we record this, it was just announced that the Friends cast would get back together and do a reunion special to kick off the new Warner Brothers streaming service that will come out in May.
That's going to...
And they're all getting like $10 million a piece, some insane amount of money to just basically do a retrospective of the show and talk about it. Not even a new episode, not even that, but just to talk. And that may be the only reunion we ever get with that show. But people continue to tune into that because these shows make people happy.
They make them happy. You feel safe.
One of the things that I find interesting about it is the way those shows were all made. All the ones I just mentioned, the way they were made, you could come back to them on the next Thursday or the next Friday, and you felt at home again. You couldn't wait to see your friends from TV again. But watching these things back to back today, the way people consume media now, sometimes these characters are just really rotten. And you watch Friends and you're like, gosh, they're all kind of terrible to each other when you binge watch. Yeah, is the thing. And Seinfeld knew that, and that's why they ended the show the way they did, with basically putting the main characters on trial. And these are spoilers for anyone who's not watched or heard about the last episodes of Seinfeld, but they're on trial for all the terrible things they did to people, you know, and all the people from all the past shows come back and talk about how awful they were. And then you realize, wow, they really were awful people. But you didn't know that when you came back every Thursday night or every Friday night to watch these people. But today, the way people consume material, it's you see that. So shows are written differently now, so that you don't get tired of the characters so quickly. You don't not like them so quickly. But one thing I will say about Cheers is that even binge watching those episodes now, I never felt that way about those characters. They played tricks on each other, they pranked each other, but I never felt those characters were really rotten to people. And and that's what I like about it, is that even binge watching, the show still is very solid in terms of how it was written, that you never really not liked people. And even watching like Sam dating a different person all the time, it still works in a way. And it's fascinating. But Cheers, one of my favorite shows. That was the bar I would love to plug into. You know, if that was real and I could be in that town and go to that bar, it had that feeling. You just wanted to come back to it every week. I remember
shooting it too, especially on the lot at Paramount. It was, I just can't tell you how wonderful the 80s were going to Paramount and doing any of those shows. They were all families. You'd go to the commissary. And I remember seeing Michael J. Fox at the commissaries, and he's shooting, his show over there, and it was a big family.
You did Facts of Life, which was a great show.
George Clooney.
Yeah.
My
People
pal
forget
George.
Clooney was there, but that was a great show. I grew up watching that, and 21 Jump Street.
And 21 Jump Street and
Johnny Depp came out of that.
Johnny
Like that
Depp.
was great.
Wow.
Early Fox stuff was like so good to watch.
I played everybody's girlfriend. I just made a living going from one show to another playing the girlfriend or the old girlfriend.
Were you Johnny Depp's girlfriend? In
I
21
was.
Jump
I was
Street?
his ex-girlfriend that was getting married, and he and I remember in Las Vegas, and he travels with his old friend, like old college buddy or whatever, to try to stop the wedding.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, do you have memories of Johnny Depp?
Oh, Johnny Depp was great. He's elusive, I remember having just a terrible crush on him. I can tell you that. I'm like, well, who wouldn't? I mean, he's just very charismatic, and he was a lot of fun to work with. He's very I don't know how to explain it. He ensnares you.
Yeah.
Like, I really got caught up in like, I'm a little tongue-tied around him.
Could you tell when you worked on Cheers and you were around Woody Harrelson or you were around Johnny Depp, could you tell these people were going to be big stars, huge stars? Like, can you get that feeling as a young actress or young actor that you're next to someone who's like, wow, this person is going to go on to be something? Or is it just appear that day? Do you recall what that was like?
No, I really felt that with Johnny Depp big time. I knew that there was something going on there with him. And Woody Harrelson, I'm telling you, he just kept. I probably did. Although he's just somebody. I was so naive. I really was so naive. And he comes in and he was just a prankster, and he made me believe that. Well, it's just a silly story. I don't even know how to explain it. But he was so well. His physique was like, he was so well built and obviously worked out like crazy. He had me convinced that he never went to the gym, and that there's never, ever, ever. And it was these silly conversations where I would actually believe it.
Wow.
That's the thing. I was very gullible. And when I was in my teens and my early 20s, I'd go on these sets, and these guys
That's funny.
were so wonderful. But and even George Clooney, he was so charismatic. He was so charismatic. I was not surprised that he found his way. And what I always loved about George was that he was always very honest about himself. Very, very real and very honest. He never believed that he was this huge actor, Marlon Brando, that was going to go change the acting world. But he knew he had charisma, and he knew what to do with it. And I think he was really smart. And I think he did grow into an amazing actor with huge chops. So I always.
I'm a big fan of ER, and I watch a lot of old ER episodes a lot, and I think he single-handedly developed the whole chin down, eyes up style of acting.
Yeah.
His brooding look from that show, which actually was just his trick for people that don't know, that he couldn't remember his lines, so he would have it written on paper, and that's why he had his head tilted.
That sounds like George. Yeah.
It was weird with Johnny Depp. He didn't want to be the guy on the poster. Girls had posters of him all over their walls during 21 Jump Street. And he's like, I don't want to be that guy. Like, I don't want to. And he left all that.
Yeah.
He left 21 Jump Street and started to do things like Edward Scissorhands and like these odd Tim Burton projects and like go a different direction. It's always interesting to me to see actors that are like that just want to throw away. I don't want to be the pretty boy actor in things. I want to try these crazy characters.
Right.
And the risk that is. You see that with a lot of people, and it paid off for him big time.
Yeah.
So you did Married with Children.
Oh God.
How fun was that?
That was fun. That was so much fun. There was a great story on that one. As I said before, you do at the end of the week you do 2 performances, one in the afternoon and one at night, and they decided to rewrite one of the scenes with Peg Bundy between episodes. They just decided it wasn't working. And they gave us a brand new scene. And maybe a half hour before we were going to go shoot it for the evening performance. And I'm in a chair getting my hair done. And she's literally, she thinks I'm having an affair with Al, which I'm not, but she thinks I am. And she's cutting my hair. And I'm wearing this blonde wig. And she literally cuts my hair off. But I'm sitting there reading a magazine, flipping through it, and what the audience doesn't know is that it's the brand new script taped inside the magazine, and my hand is scrolling down, and because she's literally reading off the script over my shoulder, and I'm trying to I'm following the lines with my finger, so she knows where she's supposed to be, and we're reading from the script.
Wow.
And they used it.
That's great. That's great.
Talk about a cold reading.
What did you like that set?
I loved it. They were so real and down to earth, every single one of them. And I found it, well, of course they would be. In order to play that kind of farce and to do it so well, you all had to be really grounded actors.
Right. Also with a studio audience. So
with a studio audience.
Interesting to do that. What about Charles in Charge? What do you remember about Charles in Charge?
That one was kind of a blur.
What was Scott Baio like?
Scott was he was okay. He was into his own. He kind of had his own world going. So I did have scenes with him, but I was supposed to be the babysitter that took over when he was gone or something. I can't remember. Yeah. And like he was afraid that they were going to like me better. And I can't even remember it all that well. I think at that time I was a smoker and I was quitting smoking and I was a little fuzzy that week.
That's great. So Superboy. So you are technically in the wikis of this world, the superhero world. Yeah. So I had met Gerard Christopher a long time ago, who was technically the second Superboy in that show. There was someone who was on the first season, and then Gerard came in and did it after that. Were you on Gerard's seasons for that? Or do you remember where you were at?
Yes, I believe.
Okay. So you were a supervillain in this.
I was the Yellow Perry.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was so much fun.
Yeah.
With all my little spells. And I got to play the double role of being the girl that's the nerd, just the total introverted, unpopular, unattractive nerd, and then being transformed into the Yellow Perry and becoming, I Dream of Jeannie, basically. But that was a lot of fun. I loved casting the spells, and the set was fantastic. And I had that little puppet who was so creepy. Yeah.
You could go and do conventions just
I suppose
for
I
that.
could.
He does, Gerard does. He goes out.
I suppose I could. Yellow Perry was fun. It was fun being evil. I've had a couple of evil things. I was that way for Freddy's Nightmare too.
I don't think that that DC has brought that. Someone will probably write in and tell me, but I don't think DC has brought that character back to do anything in any of the current incarnations of these shows.
I could be Yellow Perry's mother.
Would be interesting because that's what they're doing today in kind of the new Arrowverse. There's a whole lot of stuff like that. You see that a lot. Yeah. Back then, growing up with like the Incredible Hulk and Wonder Woman and these different shows and this earlier versions of young Clark Kent type stuff. I never thought that I would see a day when the superhero movies would be done like they are now. Like it's incredible what's become of this.
Yeah.
The DC movies not so great. DC television really great. But Marvel has just changed the game of how superhero movies can be done. It's like really amazing. Comic book fans, I think, are probably this was what they've been waiting for. This might be the peak.
It is. It is. It's true.
Would you get involved with Marvel or DC today if you could?
Sure.
Yeah. I
hadn't even thought about that, but now that you're bringing it up, it's like, wow, that's really great. I'm going to put that out into the universe.
There's a whole, especially.
Let's have Yellow Perry come back.
I watch a lot of the DC TV stuff. I like Arrow, and I like the Flash. I like these shows, and it's really interesting because they go with these ideas of there's other worlds out there. There's another type of Earth, and the Supergirl television show was on a different Earth than the Earth that So there's all these different versions of people, like the Flash television show that was around in the '90s with John Wesley Shipp. John Wesley Shipp.
He was on Guiding Light.
Yeah, he was, and his character that he played as the Flash in the '90s is in the new Flash TV show, where he also plays the Flash's father in the So he plays all these multiple roles in it, including a classic character from his show that they bring back with the costume and everything, just right, like exactly the same, because there's all these alternate worlds. So they're able to bring back all these actors and all these people that played characters from the old days, and it's really neat to see that again. And this nostalgia is really, really pretty amazing. So reach out if anyone out there from DC is listening.
Yes.
Liz is available to reprise her role.
Yeah, Yellow Perry. That sounds like fun. I really did. I had a lot of fun. I remember flying out there too. This is a little side story. I flew out to Florida to shoot that, sitting next to Betty White.
Wow.
She was going out to shoot Golden Girls. I was so nervous, and I had my little script for Yellow Perry, reading my little script. She was so lovely.
I didn't realize that Golden Girls was actually really shot in Florida.
Well, I'm assuming she went to Florida. She was going to Florida. Maybe I was in my own little Golden Girls world, thinking, of course, she's going to Florida to shoot it, but she was going to Florida.
But Superboy was shot in Florida. I didn't know that.
That was shot in Florida.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
What studio was going on down there then?
I can't tell you.
Was it in Orlando?
Remember.
Were you doing it in Orlando?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Huh. That's interesting. So Freddy's Nightmares, I was a big fan of Freddy's Nightmares. Like, a lot of people didn't realize that both Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th had a little departure in the TV shows for a little while.
Yeah.
So
I did a two-parter on that, I think.
Yeah, so Freddy's Nightmares was kind of cool, but that was like Freddy hosting a night. It was like a Twilight Zone in a way, like Freddy telling a Twilight.
And each episode had its own story with its own set of characters. And I think I was a novelist. I was a writer who was plotting to kill my husband, and I did it through the story I was writing. So whatever I wrote was really happening in real life, and so I think I poisoned him or something.
That's great.
I just remember them. I remember the audition, the breakdown had a Michelle. They said a Michelle Pfeiffer type. And I went, well, all right, I'll go for it. I was like, okay.
Later on, you moved into some Law and Order TV shows.
Oh yeah.
You did SVU and you did Criminal
Intent.
Right? Criminal
Completely opposite. Again, I do the flip thing. I go from the girl next door to the glam vixen. So criminal Intent, I played a librarian whose husband was, so I was the victim in that one, whose husband was cheating on me and having an affair with his publicist, and she was killing people, and something crazy. But I just remember that was with Vincent D'Onofrio, having scenes with him. He was lovely, and then SVU, I played the Fifth Avenue high-end evil mother of the boy that's I guess charged his high school teacher with rape, and in reality it was the other way around, or I don't know. I was evil. I was evil. My son was evil.
I have to say I don't watch Law and Order. It's not one of the shows I got into. So I know so many people that have done it, and then they made all these spinoffs.
I know. But do you know what's interesting about the SVU one? It was so I'm going to say dark and violent. I could not bring myself to watch the entire show.
Wow.
Or read the entire script. I'm just going to read the scenes that pertain to my storyline and that I need to know in order to tell this story. But I'm very protective of my consciousness now. I really am, about the images I subject myself to and what stay with me. I don't want to have to linger on imagery or ideas, and that will bring me spiraling into a really negative pit. And so I don't watch any of these criminal shows. So it was really difficult to actually do.
When that came on, I was like watching NYPD Blue, and I just couldn't like find the time to like do all these. So some people were Law and Order fans, some were kind of into CSI when that came out.
Yeah.
There were a whole bunch of these, but you just couldn't. There was no time to watch them all, you know. Yeah. And they have a life and work and do all that stuff. But I've always wanted to get into Law and Order, but like I just haven't been able to ever make the time to even watch it streaming, you know.
Yeah.
But those all great shows and much different than like all the sitcom work. So
that's completely different. And it's shot more like a film.
What I admire about your career is, number one, longevity in this business. To be able to continue to still be doing this today in over 30 years?
Over 30
nearing
years.
40 years, should I say?
30 something years.
Yeah.
30, yeah.
And even recently you did Red Dead Redemption 2. So you did video game work.
Yeah.
You cover it all.
That was a lot of fun. I played Miss Marjorie. And that was like early 1900s, kind of a Texas drawl. I was a circus manager, and I had a little family of circus performers. I had the giant and the little. I had the little person and the giant, and I called them my family. They called me mother. I was evil. I'm evil in that too.
Well, there's
I'm
even
not very nice to them.
There's even a clip. That's a popular game. That's a really popular
I'm a
video
side
game.
mission.
Yeah, your side mission, but to be in a popular video game is like so cool. And
my son was beside himself. He was in high school, his senior year in high school when I shot that, and I he just couldn't believe it, and I didn't know what it was. I came home and I went, I'm gonna do this thing. It's called, what is it called? Red something, and he's like, what? It was funny.
There's even a clip on YouTube of just your character. Like there's fans are rabid for that. It's really, really.
I love working with the suit, the
motion capture
suit with they hook you up and they monitor you, and it's all in front of a green screen, so you don't. Everything's animated, so there are no props. I had to do a circus act with a whip, and remember every time I used that whip, the animators were saying, you have to use it sparingly. You only use it very specifically, because if you move your hand around, we have to animate this whip no matter what it does. So keep it behind you. Just let it drag behind you as you go.
That's what you'll be doing as Yellow Perry when you reprise the role. You'll be in a motion capture suit on a green screen.
And I do it well. I have so much fun doing it.
All the effects will be so much better.
I loved it. See, I just love every new thing that comes my way. I love how it keeps evolving.
For having a career this long in the business and as diversified as it is, from soaps to sitcoms to procedural type dramas to video game work, and you've done theater, you've done significant amount of theater.
Yeah, I love
You've
theater.
done all this stuff. What's the best advice you can give to someone entering the business now, or as a female in the business, or just generally how to have longevity in the business? What keeps people going? Because certainly there's enough actors that just, they hang it up and they have to go home. Like, is there a secret? Is there a secret sauce? What would you say?
A secret sauce to that? I keep finding the joy in it. I mean, to me, it's about following your heart. It really is. Just go wherever brings you joy. And like, people would get like, tell me, why are you doing all these musical comedies? You should be doing the whatever. But my love of musical comedies is what sparked my love of doing sitcoms. I transferred that into being able to have all that kind of energy. It's a different kind of energy. So I guess my advice would be learn how to navigate the energy. I'm really good at that. I can dance with this. I can go to any different modality, and like film is more of a compressed. You just sit on it like you. I have a very good friend that used to say that theater is like having Thanksgiving dinner with your entire family, and you have to deal with a huge table with a lot of people. And film is having breakfast with your mother at the breakfast
Interesting.
table. And so that, to me, it's the same kind of fire that's underneath both, but it's film. You compress it. It's a compressed energy, and you're sitting on. Whoa! Look at that wind!
Big gust of wind coming through.
Yeah, it must
right
like
now.
what I'm saying right now. Universe is going, yeah. So I have to say, don't be afraid of going from stage to film. Everybody has these opinions that, oh, you have to do one or the other, or you can't do it. Stage actors can't do film. Film people can't do stage. It's like, oh, bananas. Don't be afraid of it. Just learn how to navigate it and keep following it.
That's great advice. Great advice. So, with my podcast, I like to, I like to get to know my guests, but I also like to bring up things that are a little more controversial, a little trickier. Now, people that know me know I've had a history in film and television, and I've done this for a lot of my life, and I've moved out of it in recent years to move toward my, my Metacortex project, and I put my book out, and my life's changed in a lot of ways in terms of how I've gained my spirituality and how I didn't feel fulfilled in film and television, and that I have a different calling now, and there's certainly a dark side to this industry. And as we record this podcast today, we're just days away from Harvey Weinstein's verdict. He's guilty. He's probably going to spend a lot of time in jail. Yeah. And certainly there's elements like that. Did you ever have experiences where you saw a dark side of the business, or would you obviously you're here today to talk to us, so you've navigated that. But did you see a seedy side of the business, or was it relatively just good to you?
Both. The answer is yes and yes. I did see it.
Is it mainly in drugs or predatory behaviors?
Predatory behaviors. But I have to say, I'm a tigress when it comes to that, and I absolutely wouldn't enter it. I wouldn't allow myself to even. There was something within me, even though I was naive and young, and Woody Harrelson could convince me that he never went to the gym. You couldn't convince me to step outside of my integrity.
Yeah.
That there was something within me that just wouldn't allow for that. So if it ever, I don't talk about stuff. I don't really believe in feeding all of that. But I did have a few instances of predatory behavior, of which I just absolutely said no. I just resisted and said no. Now, granted, nothing that ever stopped my career from advancing.
Yeah.
So I was never faced with that. I never lost a job because of that. I might have lost contacts, but they weren't contacts that I wanted. So I guess
Is it different, maybe to define it, like there's casting couch behavior.
Yeah.
And then there's like an actor on set that might hit on a guest star. Do you differentiate between the two, or is it the same thing?
I didn't have any issues with the casting couch. Casting people have been really wonderful. And quite frankly, most of them were women that were very lovely and generous. People on set, when I would guest star, I had a few instances where it's just been assumed that I would.
I see.
go along with a particular behavior and be one of the girls. They always do this. All the guest stars do this. I'm like, I don't think so.
That type of activity will probably always be around in Hollywood, do you think? Or do you think it will the practice of that will end eventually? Do you think Weinstein verdict changes how this is?
Well, I had an instance. This is going to be the difference, and I won't say what the show is or what the person was, because I just don't believe in doing that.
No, don't.
But I did have an instance where somebody really had predatory behavior and had certain expectations of me while I was the guest on that show, and was pretty insistent. And I felt the pressure, and I was like, no. I'm just doing my job and I'm going home. And when the persistence kept coming, I actually did say something to a producer.
Wow.
It's like, this is because they wanted to know what was wrong and because it could see something was happening. And when I said, this is happening and I don't appreciate it, they walked the other direction.
Wow.
They absolutely did not stand up for me and did not do anything about it, just said, okay, I'm not touching this, and walked away and let me deal with it on my own, which I did.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that that's what's changed and what will change and what will not be allowed to exist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that was the closest I ever got to, wow, no one's going to back me up here.
Wow.
Oh, okay, I see. And I think now you just can't get away with that happening and you getting away scot-free.
Right. No, I totally agree with that. I do. It's crazy to see how things are shifting. I think the studios, the production companies are taking more ownership in this and really locking in on this behavior. I think there's always going to be the horny guy or girl that are going to, be looking for someone to go out with on a particular night.
Oh, sure.
That's always going to happen,
Yeah.
I think, among actors. But but I think a lot of things are going to really be micromanaged from this, for sure.
Yes. See, I think when I went to that level, when the producers when they just walked away and were going to let me fry, basically.
Yeah.
I think on that level, that's changed. I just don't think that they would allow for that. I'm hoping that a male predator who feels that they have that kind of power won't be allowed to have that kind of power.
Right.
That won't be able to exist. But a lot of it's the culture of the set. You go in and you feel it on different shows.
Yeah.
You can really feel it. And I also am very spiritual in my way of going about what I'm asking for in my life. And I made very clear intentions of the kind of people that I wanted to work with. And I made a list of qualities of how I wanted to feel when I went on a set. And ever since I did that, that's what I've been getting.
And I think, too, what you just said about there's a culture on a set, I think that's also kind of a branch of the corporate culture of the studio, too.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people that sometimes felt at home more at Warner Brothers than they did at Sony. And it's almost from the top level down that there is a corporate culture of everything that's there, including all the shows and the showrunners and all that stuff.
For instance, when I talked about being on Paramount, that was just a whole bunch of families.
Yeah.
Whatever was going on there with that, but the happy days and the cheers and all of that, it's like, give me Paramount. I just, every time I walked onto that lot, I knew I was safe. I knew I was valued. And you got that.
And I think that still exists today, this corporate cultures and kind of the way all that stuff is done, only on a much bigger level, because there's like so many more networks now and so many more methods of delivery for things. There's probably more opportunities now than there ever has been.
Right.
So you have a website, you're LizKeifer.com, right? Or Liz Keifer Acting?
Well, I have so many.
You have a whole bunch of websites.
I think I need to condense them. LizKeifer.com is my coaching website.
Right, which I wanted to bring up. That's why. So tell me about that. So it's life coaching, right?
It's life coaching. It's helping people with empowerment, self-empowerment, standing in your power. everything that I learned from surviving
Uh-huh.
the acting world
Yeah.
and industry, as well as I did a deep dive into a lot of training with life coaching. I worked with Dr. Martha Beck for many years, and also Christy Whitman, who's really lovely. I did a lot of intense training with her with law of attraction and universal laws and what have you. So I have my own little blend of how I just with how when Guiding Light, the end of Guiding Light was very tumultuous, and especially the last 5 years, because before the show actually went off the air, I was actually taken off contract. So I had this change of status of 12 years of this amazing contract where life was just crazy good, right? And then I was taken off contract, but still remained on the show, but meant I had to live in this world of uncertainty and not.
And I want everyone. So I don't mean to cut you up, but I want everyone to hear this in your podcast.
Oh, okay.
So save some of this
I'll
because
save it,
you have a podcast that just came out called "Let's All Feel Better."
Let's All Feel
And this
Better.
is like the first episode.
This
like
is
you
the
pour
first
all this
episode.
out, so don't spoil it here.
Okay, I
everyone go listen to this
Okay,
because
yes.
it's incredible.
So, but what happened was when I left Guiding Light, I really did have a change of mission in life, where it was no longer about getting the next acting role, of which I'm still auditioning and doing acting roles.
Yeah.
But it really became important to work with people. I started working with people acting-wise, being an acting coach, but really what I was doing was life coaching, because I was helping them stay in their center, stay in their power, know what they're feeling, what they're thinking, and learning how to respond to the stories that they're telling themselves. So it really became important to start a business where I would help non-actors learn all these tools that I learned as an actor. And I'm really good at that. I'm really good at helping non-actors learn how to get comfortable and find their power and find their center and creatively. Yeah. So I have a coaching business, and now I have a podcast called Let's All Feel Better, where I really go through all of this. I share a lot of tools and strategies.
I'm five episodes into the 6 that are out, or is that right?
There's
There's
five
out?
episodes.
So I'm on the final one that's out right now.
Oh my goodness, you're on the final one. 5 are up, and then we'll be letting one every couple of weeks after this, and because I'm doing this with my partner.
And people can find that at letsallfeelbetter.com. There's a YouTube page.
Letsallfeelbetter.com is our website.
Right.
We're on Apple. Let's All Feel Better podcast is at Apple, Spotify. We have a YouTube channel, Let's All Feel Better. Basically, anything you type in for Let's All Feel Better, you'll find the podcast.
Yeah.
And then you can go to the website and speak to us if you want. Ask questions.
I think I'm trying to remember if I'm remembering this correctly, but did you mention in the podcast about being pregnant on Guiding Light, and they were covering you up, or that what was?
I was.
Yeah.
My first pregnancy in real life. First, Blake was pregnant, and I wore a pillow for 9 months, which was hysterical. Those twins by 2 different fathers. I wore a pillow for 9 months, and then as soon as Blake had her babies, then Liz got pregnant, and then they hid it. And I had the big affair with Ben Warren, so that was hysterical. And I had to hide behind big purses and sofas.
Wow. See, and you've had 2 kids.
2 kids.
And you've continued working all this time.
I've been blessed, as in the acting fairies just said, oh, we're going to give you a fabulous job where you don't even have to work 5 days a week, and you can be home at night, and you can be pregnant, and you get to be a working actor, and you get to work with Jerry Verdorn and Maureen Garrett and Maeve Kincaid and Michael Zaslow,
Wow.
and, and all these, wonderful people. I mean, that cast was insanely talented and loving, and I can't say enough good things. Kim Zimmer and oh my gosh, the list goes on and on and on and on and on.
Yeah. I want to talk about, this is the last topic I really want to get into in the show today, but I'm always interested in spirituality in the entertainment business, because there's a lot of it hidden. There's a lot of people that don't wear their Catholicism on their sleeve in Hollywood. Today, there are a lot of young actors and hosts and different people that are coming out and being more about that they're Christians, or that they're Catholic, or that they're Jewish, or whatever they are. Do you remember, like, how important is that in the business to keep a spirituality or to be in an organized religion? And why do you think people don't talk about it more? Why don't you think it's a bigger part?
It's a really good question, and I went through it myself. Not with an organized religion, but just even coming out with, I'm now going to work with people, and I work with my coaching. It's very spiritual in nature, because I'm a mystic, you know. I believe in all of that and the laws of the universe and law of attraction, but done intelligently and creatively, you know. But I think it's important to have that, so you have something, you have your own source. You know, if you're just being if your identity is based on the last show the show that you're on, and if you happen to be a working actor or not, you're going to be in trouble, because the nature of the business is you're just a gypsy, and it just, you know, everybody's only worried about, even when they're on a show, is it going to go off, and what's going to be my next show? And so I think it's important to have something that's bigger than you, and that you're a part of, and you have purpose, and you understand why you're in this business and how it's helping people.
Yeah.
Because that's how you stay. And that's how you, well, that's the reason for purpose. It's you align yourself with purpose. I mean, when all that flows, wow, the success just comes easily. That's what I have found to be true. But it was interesting. I have had a really strong spiritual life, and I was afraid to show that. Like, oh, now I'm going to be, they're not going to be able to see me as a bad girl, or, you know, I'm limiting myself by identifying myself with this particular thought, you know, modality. It's a good question. Why is there fear of being exposed?
It seems like there's a lot of people in the Hollywood community that are searching for something, as evident by, you know, how, like, Church of Christian Science and
look how
Scientology
Scientology comes
all kinds of, you know, people are reaching for anything they can get. People go to take yoga classes to get some level of spirituality, and they go off to retreats and all these different things. And but, you know, but why don't we hear it more? That's what I find interesting about the whole thing is.
It's because I know I was given the message to keep your private life private. Don't give them too much information. Keep yourself an enigma, so you can be a blank slate to people. What is that? I have found that I've had more success by being genuine, human, honest, open, and vulnerable. And I've made a decision that I am not listening to those rules of old Hollywood anymore. Hence my podcast, where I think that's more magnetic and more engaging, and it's all about inclusivity, and that's what acting does. Is if you can see your humanity in somebody else, and you feel connected, you can connect to people. So I don't understand why we're giving the message of stay separate. Yeah. It makes no sense.
That's a good way to end this on, for sure. Liz, I appreciate you coming on the show.
You're welcome.
And imparting all this knowledge on us and giving us a walkthrough of the history of you in the business, which is amazing.
It was fun, and you know so much. I'm so impressed.
And are you on social media? How can people find you on social media?
Instagram, I'm at the Liz Keifer. Facebook, I'm at Liz Keifer Actor. And Twitter, I'm at Liz Keifer. Plus, Let's All Feel Better has all its own, everything at Let's All Feel Better is for Instagram. And
Yeah, that's on everything.
It's
So
on everything.
go listen to that
but
podcast.
you can find me. I'm there. And find me. Ask me questions.
It is very good. And go to her website for life coaching if you need it.
Yeah.
This
LizKeifer.com.
woman knows what she's talking about. I'm telling you. I know her. But Liz, hey, thanks for coming on, and we'll have you back again, and we'll have more topics and more things to talk about.
I would love to.
We'll do it in 30 years when you have 30 years more work
And
to
I'll
talk
be
about.
Yellow Perry's grandmother.
You will be. Yellow Perry's grandmother. All right.
I love it. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
There you have it, my interview with Liz Keifer. We recorded this before COVID and before protests and riots, back when Harvey Weinstein was the top news story. It seems like forever ago, but really it's only been a few months. I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. There won't be one for Labor Day Monday, so I'll see you in 2 weeks on Quest. Thank you for listening to Quest. Please be sure and rate and review this podcast. This podcast is copyright. Any previously trademarked or copyright content is used by permission. Be sure to visit the official website for the International Association of Metatomics at metatomics.org, or find us on social media for other unique content. And make sure to pick up a copy of the book that started a spiritual revolution, Metatomics, The Grand Design, available for sale online and at most major bookstores. Thanks for listening.